Welcome to this episode of the Aquarius Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
Does it really matter where I place my tank? As long as it looks good, I'm fine, right? Well, no, that's not entirely true at all. In fact, placement isn't just about aesthetics. It's about your tank's long-term health, your fish's well-being, and long-term, your own enjoyment of the hobby. So in this episode, we're going to look at several factors that are going to affect the placement of your aquarium and why they matter. So whether you're setting up a tiny little better tank or a nano tank in your home office, or a massive tank that is a showpiece in your home, stick around. And certainly, if you're considering buying a new tank and thinking about where it should be, this is the episode for you. So let's get into this discussion. Let's start by asking the first question. Why is aquarium placement so important? Well, let's remember that aquariums are ecosystems, and ecosystems are deeply affected by their environments. Some core goals for good placement would be the environmental stability, that's light, temperature, sound, structural safety for both the tank and the building, ease of maintenance, that's really important, the visibility of the tank and the enjoyment that you will have from watching that tank, and even the livestock compatibility, because where you place your tank can affect what you can keep in that tank. So you need to think of placement of your aquarium as part of your overall planning, part of your overall health of your system. It's not a secondary issue. It's absolutely foundational. Let's start then with lighting. There are three main sources of lighting for your aquarium. There's direct sunlight, there's reflected and indirect light, and there's room lighting. That obviously is over and above any lighting you will have installed for your tank specifically. Direct sunlight can raise your tank temperature by 2 to 5 degrees centigrade unexpectedly, and it can also cause explosive algae growth. Reflected and indirect light, less damaging, but still a concern for algae. And remember that reflected light can interfere with the viewing angle or the glare. This is important when you're thinking about where you will be sitting or standing observing your aquarium. You don't want to be in a place where you cannot see what's inside your tank for most of the day because of the reflected light from windows and open doors. Too much ambient light from your room can disrupt light-sensitive species as well. So these are the kind of things you need to consider. An example would be a lady who I came across about a year ago. She had a 200-litre planted tank next to a sliding glass door. Absolutely fantastic tank, and it was gorgeous during the day. But 6 months in, that tank was taken over by hair algae and overheating issues. So she ended up having to use blackout curtains to sort out the algae. She had to increase CO2, and she rescaped her entire tank eventually. If she had just considered where to place that beautiful tank, she may not have had those issues at all. Let's also then talk basic physics. 1 litre of water weighs 1 kilogram. So a 200-litre tank, that's 200 kilograms of water alone. If you add substrate and the weight of the glass, the decor, the equipment, you're looking at between 250 and 300 kilograms quite easily. So it's really important that you use a level, load-bearing surface. Do not place your aquarium on a floating shelf, or little end tables, or little cheap things you've bought from a local discount store. Not a good idea. This is going to create issues down the line. Maybe not initially, but as the surface weakens, as that piece of furniture continues to take strain, it is possible that you're going to have a real problem on your hands down the line. Always check that what you're placing your aquarium on can bear the weight of a fully stocked aquarium. What about temperature issues? Well, you don't want to be putting your tank next to a drafty door, regularly open windows, under air conditioning units, near fireplaces, and that kind of thing. Now, your ideal ambient room temperature for a community tank is going to be between 22 and 25 degrees. And if there's a regular fluctuation around that, some species are going to struggle. For example, your discus and certain other species that are very sensitive to temperature fluctuations can find changes of even 2 degrees per day very stressful. Now, obviously, if you're keeping your own dedicated fish room or aquarium room, you can put your own climate control in there. You can have a heated room and so forth. Certainly you can do that. But for most people who are listening to this podcast, I would imagine that you don't have 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 tanks. You've maybe got one or two that you're putting in your home office, in your office environment. So using a dedicated room is not really an option. And because of that, just be careful where you place your tank. Make sure that you are not exposing your aquarium to constant temperature fluctuations throughout the day. Something else that we don't often consider in terms of aquarium placement is sound and vibration. Fish can feel vibrations, and even your internal filter hum can create some form of low-level stress for your fish. And if that is true, then what about things like children running by the tank on a regular basis, subwoofers from your home theatre, doors slamming open and shut all day long, washing machines on the other side of the wall? All of this matters. So consider adding some kind of vibration padding. Consider not placing your aquarium in a place where it's going to have constant sound and vibration issues. Normally peaceful fish, or normally quite placid fish, are constantly hiding. They're darting around the tank regularly, or they have a poor appetite. That can be linked to noise. Don't discount this factor. For example, if you have an aquarium at the entrance of a commercial enterprise, maybe an office, and people are walking in and out all the time, they're shutting doors, they are walking past, some of them are going to arrive and want to look into the tank, and some of them are going to tap on the glass and that kind of thing. Not a good idea. Your fish and the inhabitants in your tank are going to take strain, for sure. We know as aquarists that looking after your tank requires regular maintenance. So when you're placing your tank, make sure that you don't forget about this crucial aspect. Is there enough space behind the tank for your filters, your hoses, your cords? Is there enough space above the tank for lids and for lighting? Is there enough floor space so that you can work with buckets and siphons and so on? And if you don't have that space, you're going to regret it, and you're going to have to get very creative in terms of trying to find a way to maintain your tank quite easily. Also consider the source of your water. Truthfully, running buckets across the house gets old really fast. So consider where the nearest tap is. Consider how you're going to manage your water source. Are you going to have an RO system, or you're not? Are you going to have a tap nearby? Are you going to use some kind of automatic water change system? Think about those things and plan for them ahead of time. You also need to take into account what animals you're going to place into your tank. Where you place your tank will matter in this regard. If your room is regularly cold, either you need to invest in multiple heaters or avoid tropical fish. Or rather go with fish that can manage a lower temperature range, for example, some of the Danios and the minnow species. If you have a very noisy room, avoid shy species such as discus or hatchetfish. If you've got a particularly bright environment, provide shade for the animals by using the decor cleverly in your tank. Pick plants that love high light. So you can customize the species to the room, or you can customize the room to the species. But in order for you to do that, you have to plan ahead. You need to do your research, you need to do your thinking. Don't just go ahead, buy a tank, find a space, stick it into your room, and hope for the best. An often overlooked issue is where your power points are. You need to make sure that your power points are grounded, that they're above water level, and that they're easily accessible. Now, I know when I started my fish room, that wasn't something I did particularly well, and I've had to get rather creative in terms of figuring this out. So I wish I had thought about this better when I initially started my fish room. And it is my plan in the next couple of months to redo the entire power setup in my fish room, because right now, although it works and it's safe, it's not optimal. And I wish I had done this right up front. You need to think about things like, can you reach the tank quickly if there's a leak? Is that leak going to affect power points? Do you have access to backup in case of a power outage at your home or in your area? These are important factors, don't forget them. If you've placed your tank in a situation now where you do have issues, then you need to think about how you're going to fix it. If there's too much sun, are you going to add blinds? Are you going to move the tank? Are you going to use a denser background? Are you going to provide some kind of shade to the tank? If you can't access your tank easily, are you going to think about how to change where you store your equipment? Are you going to think about how, what you need to buy? Is it longer tubing? Is it a different water change system? What are you going to do to allow your maintenance to happen more easily? If there are structural issues, if you notice that the surface on which you have placed your tank is starting to take strain, don't wait. That's an urgent issue. Drain your tank, relocate it. If you can reinforce the piece of furniture, but honestly, my advice would be change the location. Get a new piece of furniture. Don't put that heavy tank back onto a piece of furniture that is already taking strain and looking like it could collapse at any time. If there's a noise problem in your area, think about where you would place the tank. Are you placing your speakers directly towards the tank in your home? Is it a place where a lot of people are walking through on a regular basis? That might need to be a repositioning issue. You might need to relocate your tank entirely. And that might seem like a lot of work, and it is. But remember that the pain of relocating is nothing compared to the disaster of leaving a problem unchecked. So let me begin to end by stating something that I mentioned in the beginning. Where you place your tank is not a secondary issue. It's not a cosmetic choice. It's not aesthetic. It's foundational. So before you even open that initial bag of gravel as you start planning your substrates and your decor, ask yourself 3 questions. Is this spot safe? Is it stable? And will it help my fish thrive? Because if the answer to any of those 3 questions is not a confident yes, it's worth taking the time to rethink. Folks, we are constantly learning in this hobby, and we're all going to make mistakes along the way. Tank placement is absolutely critical, but particularly when it comes to the structural integrity of what you're placing your aquarium on. Do not forget how heavy an aquarium is. So please take the time to ensure that what you're placing your aquarium on, it is weight bearing and has structural integrity. I would love to hear your wins in terms of tank placement and perhaps the lessons learned when it hasn't gone well. So feel free to leave a comment if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube. Also make sure that you are leaving a comment or a review on the podcast app. It's always good for us to learn from each other. And speaking of reviews, they really help the show to grow. So you can leave a comment, either an audio comment or written comment, on the link that is in the description of the podcast episode. Thank you so much for your support of this podcast. The podcast continues to grow. It's really exciting to see the growth, and I'm grateful for all the time that you have spent listening to these episodes. I know there are lots of repeat listeners, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. I am aware that as the podcast continues to grow, there's greater responsibility on my part to provide high quality content, and I welcome your input in terms of making the show better and also ideas for topics going forward. Folks, thanks again for listening. Thanks for making time to learn together. So until we meet again for the next episode, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarius Edge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarius Edge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.